Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Strawberry Rhino, and in today's video I have a full review for you of the Ultimate Season Pass tank for the Battlefront season, the MBT-80. But first, before we get into the rest of the video, I'd just like to say I'm very sorry for the delay in getting this review out for you. Unfortunately, since I put the review out of the level 100 reward for the Battlefront season, the 114 SP2, I have injured my back, something to do with the discs in the bottom of my back, and unfortunately I haven't been able to sit up, play the game or make videos since my last video, so that's why there's been no content since the last one. I'm starting to recover slowly now, so hopefully I'll be able to put a few videos out for you over the Christmas period. But now we can get into the rest of this video. We're going to be reviewing the Ultimate Season Pass tank for the Battlefront season, like I've just mentioned, the MBT-80. To be able to get this tank, you have to purchase the Ultimate Season Pass for 6,000 gold, which is a pretty decent price. The season passes are always pretty good value, and the MBT-80 is an Era 3 heavy tank, a premium heavy tank for the Western Alliance. And yeah, it's a pretty decent vehicle, in my opinion, pretty well balanced. Here is the tank in question: Era 3 Western Alliance Premium Heavy Tank. Composite armour over the whole of the vehicle, some nice added sort of space composite armour to the front of the sides on both sides of this tank. Pretty nice turret, however the rest of the armour leaves a little bit to be desired. However, the gun is quite nice as well, and we will be going over to Excel to have a look at the stats of this vehicle in just a second. Then I'll talk you through my commander and equipment setup, the armor profile of this vehicle, and then I've got two gameplays for you to demonstrate how this tank performs on the battlefield. So over here on Excel, I've got the stats of the MBT-80 here on the left, and we're going to be comparing to three vehicles in today's video. So the first one is the Peace Cells Leclerc Aries prototype, which is in the store again if you wanted to pick that one up. That's also a premium Era 3 tank, and we're also going to be comparing to the M1A1 Abrams and the Challenger 1, as they're similar in terms of their hit points and their guns. So you can kind of guess that the MBT-80 is going to be kind of a lower Era 3 level tank in terms of some of its stats, so don't expect it to be the absolute best, but yeah, it's still a pretty decent vehicle. And before we get going, if you haven't seen my color coding before, green is the best stat, red is the worst, and orange is somewhere in between, and the ones highlighted in yellow are the updated base stats with my commander and equipment setup applied. So as always with my reviews, we're going to look at the silver XP and commander XP bonus, as two of these vehicles are premium vehicles, the MBT-80 of course, and also the Peace Cells Leclerc Aries prototype. So in terms of the silver bonus on the MBT-80, 55%, 5% more than the Peace Cells, and you also get 15% on the XP bonus, which is 5% more than the Peace Cells. In terms of your commander XP bonus, 15%, which is 10% less than the Peace Cells, but yeah, a nice amount of silver XP and commander XP. And now we can get into the base stats of all of these vehicles. So as you can see straight off the bat with the hit points, 3,900. That is a lot more than the Peace Cells, the other premium tank in this comparison, by 300 more. You have the same hit points as the M1A1 Abrams, and you have 50 more than the Challenger 1, so a nice healthy slug of hit points for a lower level heavy tank or main battle tank in Era 3. Unfortunately, you have a very poor view range at 525 meters, the same as the M1A1 Abrams, miles off the Peace Cells and even worse than the Challenger 1. So try and boost that if you can with things like combat Russians and just a general good crew, and you should be able to do some spotting for yourself. You are a main battle tank, so you're going to be brawling it out on ridge lines using your turret armor, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a slight downside to this vehicle. In terms of the mobility of the MBT-80, you can see it does have a very large engine power at 1500, the same as the Peace Cells, not quite as good as the M1A1 Abrams. However, you do have a very poor power to weight. This feels very, very sluggish for a main battle tank in Era 3. This 22.3 power to weight ratio is miles off the other tanks, and as you can see, the piece sales comes out miles on top at a power to weight ratio of 28.85, just shy of 30 with the power to weight. In terms of your top forward speed, 69.2 kilometers an hour forwards, which isn't the worst in this comparison. That goes to the M1A1 Abrams. However, it's not the best as well, with the piece cells, and the Challenger 1 can go in 72.4 kilometers an hour forwards. Your reverse speed is pretty nice at 38.6 kilometers an hour, helping you to get off of those ridgelines pretty quickly. Not as good as the Challenger 1's 40.2 kilometers an hour in reverse. However, it is the same as the M1A1 Abrams and better than the piece cells. One of the major downsides in comparison, or in conjunction I should say, with the power to weight is this horrific hull traverse, meaning it's very slow to move your hull, 30 degrees a second, which as you can see is 14 degrees a second less than the piece cells, 8 degrees a second less than the M1A1 Abrams, and 4 degrees a second less than the Challenger 1, so very sluggish at turning. You do have 40 degrees a second on your turret, which is the same as all the other vehicles, so as long as you are moving your hull and turret at the same time, you can usually get your gun around. For tanks that are trying to circle you, like the Wiesel 1A1 TOW or a Jaguar 1 or any of the light tanks like the BMP-3, you should be able to get your gun around, and your hull traverse can improve if you use certain things in your commander and equipment setup, and I'll show you how I have improved mine to 33 degrees a second later on. But of course you can use the mobility equipment. However, in my opinion, there are better things to invest in your setup. So nothing great there in terms of the mobility, pretty sluggish, a reasonable top forward and reverse speed, however poor hull traverse, and a decent turret traverse. So mainly bad, with the turret traverse sort of helping it out just a little bit, getting its gun around on targets. In terms of the gun then, for the MBT-80 120mm caliber gun, that's the same as all of the other guns in this comparison. However, not all 120mm caliber guns are the same. So on the MBT-80, you can fire standard APF SDS, premium APF SDS, and your third ammunition option is a HESH round, which is much better than a heat round for Era 3 in Cold War, because of all the composite armor protecting against ATGM, HESH, and sort of splash damage and things like that. HESH is better because you can actually splash your targets, but it's better for those lightly armored targets like light tanks, improving your DPM, meaning that instead of just having your shell absorbed like you would do with a heat round like on the piece cells of the M1A1 Abrams, you have slightly lower penetration, higher alpha, and you can take down lightly armored targets a lot quicker than those other vehicles can. So that's a good plus in my opinion. In your standard rounds, you have 1550 meters a second shell velocity with 515mm a pen for a 550 alpha damage. Your premium APF SDS, a slight jump in your shell velocity to 1590 meters a second, a massive jump in pen to 680 millimeters, and the same 550 alpha damage. And with your HESH rounds, a massive decrease in your shell velocity to be expected, 660 meters a second, a decrease to 310 millimeters pen, but that's still pretty good for Era 3, and you can pen a lot of lightly armored plates and tanks with this HESH rounds, and that jumps your alpha damage from 550 to 680. So when we do compare these rounds to the rounds on the other tanks, you can see in terms of your alpha damage, the same alpha damage that is on the piece cells on your standard and premium rounds, you have a higher alpha damage than the M1A1 Abrams, and you have a higher alpha damage on your standard rounds than the Challenger 1. However, with the premium rounds on the Challenger 1, you do have the same 550 alpha damage. Challenger 1 also has HESH rounds with the exact same alpha damage and penetration as the MBT-80. In terms of your actual penetration then on your standard rounds, very, very disappointing, miles off something like the piece cells, which is the best in this comparison, 633mm of penetration. You're still some way off the M1A1 Abrams, but you do beat the Challenger 1, which has horrific pen for Era 3. Your premium rounds do have that massive jump to 680mm of penetration, which is just shy of the 700 on the piece cells. Not as good as the M1A1 M1 Abrams, which has 740mm, which is the best in this comparison. However, you still beat the Challenger 1. So if you're firing premium, you have decent enough penetration for Era 3. Standard penetration can struggle quite a lot to penetrate some of the tanks that you will be coming up against. So definitely bear that in mind when you're trying to set up your vehicle. Can you afford to spend a little bit more silver per battle to use the premium APF SDS? In terms of shell velocity on your standard and your premium, yeah, it's still pretty decent at sniping at mid to long range. You will lose penetration over distance with APF SDS. However, you will be able to actually hit your target. It's not as good as something like the Peace Cells, which has the best in class shell velocity 1790 meters a second on its standard and its premium rounds, and it's kind of comparable to the premium rounds on the M1A1 Abrams, and it's very comparable to the Challenger 1. So although it's not the best, it's definitely not the worst. Of course, the shell velocity on your HESH rounds isn't great, but as long as you can make it work, double the kind of lead you were giving, use it at close quarters against lightly armoured tanks, you can make that great 310mm of pen work for 680 damage and improve your DPM. So now we're going to get on into the gun handling of all these vehicles, and with the MBT-80's 120mm, it can feel a little bit derpy regardless of the stats you see before you. So you have a 2-second aim time, the same as the M1A1 Abrams, better than the Peace Cells, however the Challenger 1 comes out on top. A 0.26 accuracy, the same as the Peace Cells, which is the joint worst in this comparison. A little bit off the M1A1 Abrams and miles off the best in this comparison, which is the Challenger 1. In terms of your rate of fire, 8.22, you reload in 7.3 seconds, which gives you a DPM of 4,521. As you can see, that is the worst in this comparison, so a little bit off the DPM of the Peace Cells, a little bit worse than the M1A1 Abrams, and miles off the best in this comparison, which is the Challenger 1. However, you do have to deal with that horrific penetration on the Challenger 1 standard and its premium round. So although it's the worst in this comparison, it's still a pretty nice DPM with a nice alpha damage of 550, and as long as you're clever about when you're shooting and who you're engaging, you definitely can make it work, and it's not the end of the world. In terms of ammo capacity, 54 rounds, not as high as the Peace Cells, but you do have more than the M1A1 Abrams and more than the Challenger 1. And one great thing about this tank is 10 degrees of gun depression to use the turret armor on this vehicle. It's better than the Peace Cells, better than the Abrams and the Challenger 1, so you can be more flexible on ridgelines. And all of these tanks have 20 degrees of gun elevation, meaning that they can shoot up at their targets pretty nicely. So as an overall package for the MBT-80, your bonuses are great. You're going to be earning more silver XP and commander XP, nice healthy slug of hit points with poor view range. Unfortunately, your mobility is sluggish and your hold reverse, it feels like you're turning a boat sometimes, so try and improve that if you can. A pretty nice alpha damage, good shell velocity, poor standard but good premium pen, and some very nice HESH rounds. 550 alpha damage and 680 alpha damage is very nice. The gun handling is not awful, but it can feel a little bit derpy, so do everything you can to improve it. And as you do have the worst in this comparison in terms of your DPM, do everything you can to improve that about your tank. Get hull down, and yeah, I'm going to show you the turret armor and the armor profile in just a bit to see how the armor holds up in Era 3. So that's it for the review part of the MBT-80. We're now going to get into my commander and equipment setup and see what I run on this vehicle. So in terms of my equipment, what I like to run is the advanced loader, the traction system, and I like to run the gun stabilizer. So traction system, that's going to be helping out that top forward speed, but more importantly, the whole rotation speed by 10%. Gun stabilizer to help the accuracy, as it does feel a little bit derpy, and advanced loader to help the DPM out. You could drop the traction system if you aren't worried about the mobility, and you could use improved ventilation. That would further improve your gun handling and DPM, and also your view range, but I think it's worthwhile using the traction system for that little boost to your mobility. And in terms of your commander skills, 6th Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Off-Road Driving, Deadeye, and Track Mechanics. So 6th Sense and Born Leader are standard on every one of my commanders, alongside Rapid Loading to help the reload by 10%. Then I run Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, snapshot, so that's 3 gun handling skills to help the gun handling of this vehicle out, off-road driving to help the mobility on soft terrain and on moderately soft terrain, Deadeye because of the pretty nice DPM and the slightly higher sort of alpha damage on a 120 at 550, that's just an increase to the amount that you can damage your enemy modules, and it does help with sort of damaging critical hits, damaging fuel tanks, setting people on fire, ammo racks, that kind of thing. And track mechanic to help get my tracks back on, because the whole armour isn't great on this vehicle. If you wanted to tweak it, you definitely could take out things like the off-road driving, the Deadeye, or the track mechanic to improve more aspects about this vehicle. You could use run and gun to add extra accuracy when you are on the move and gun handling. You could also run something like clutch braking to help the whole rotation out just that little bit more. And if you wanted to take track mechanic out, you could either improve something like your view range, you could use pain tolerance to decrease the amount that your crew get injured, or you could use safe storage to help your ammo rack, because this tank does feel like it gets its ammo rack damaged quite frequently. But that's just a nice template for you to use, and you can tweak it to your liking. But if you use the same setup as me, you'll be looking at a jump from 525 to 570 meters view range. In terms of your mobility, because of the traction system and the off-road driving on the Commander, forward speed goes to 76.12 kilometers an hour, reverse speed to 42.46 kilometers an hour, so very nice at going backwards off of those ridge lines. The whole traverse only improves by 3 degrees a second, but you can of course use clutch braking to further improve that, but I found it works just enough. And with the gun handling skills, the turret traverse improves from 40 to 48.65 degrees a second. Gun handling wise, as we have improved the gun handling of this vehicle, the aim times dropped to 1.84 seconds, accuracy down to a great 0.21, and in terms of the DPM, the rate of fire has gone up to 11.27, which means I now reload for 1 round in 5.32 seconds, meaning my DPM 6,199, so a big jump there. And bear in mind that is using combat rations as my consumable alongside a large med and a large repair kit. So that's it for this part of the review. I'm now going to go over to the garage. We're going to talk through the armor profile of this tank. I'll tell you what I found out during my play session in this vehicle, and then we're going to get stuck into the 2 gameplays. So I will see you over in the garage in just a second. So here we are in the garage, and we're going to have a look at the armor viewer of the MBT-80. We're going to go from the thickest down to the thinnest parts of the armor, and I'll tell you my take home about how to play this vehicle and also how to take it out on the battlefield. So the thickest parts of the armor are the sides of your mantlet at 650 millimeters of armor. Directly behind the gun is 600 millimeters of armor, so very strong on the turret. Then you have these 450 millimeter sections, quite well angled to the left and the right on the turret, and that's pretty good at bouncing quite a lot of shots. 410 millimeters of sections on the side sections there of the turret, 360 millimeters on the roof of the turret and the sections just below those previous angled sections we have looked at. Then you've got these other sections here that join the mantlet at 340 millimeters, 330 millimeters, and then these weird sections here at 320 millimeters. The top part, as you can see there, or the mid plate there between the sort of lower plate and upper plate, 300 millimeters. A couple of irrelevant sections there at 290 millimeters. And then, as it is always with these Cold War vehicles, lots of random sections, 230 millimeters. You've got a cupola, which is only 180 millimeters on top of your vehicle. So even if it's hull down, there is still a weak spot for you to shoot, which is always very balanced and very nice. This section here of composite armor or space armor on the outside of the vehicle goes kind of from the middle right to the front drive wheel. It's 160 millimeters, which does protect against ATGMs and HESH and HE rounds, as well as heat rounds. 152 millimeters of lower plate armor, so not great on the lower plate. And as you can see, there are more sections behind that pretty strong turret at 152 millimeters, with the bottom part of the cupola there 152 millimeters as well. Side of the turret, 150 millimeters of armor. and then you have these sort of triangle sections here on the upper hull, which are 140 and 120mm respectively. The turret ring, if you can actually catch a shot into it, is 114mm of armour. You have 101mm of roof armour, so no worries there about getting overmatched in that section. The rest of your upper plate, 85mm, and even though it's well angled, in Era 3, things are just going to butter through this, especially if they're looking down on you and going through it. You have this section here of 80mm, and if someone's sort of face hugging you, this is the place to shoot. If you do have poor penetration, this is a great weak spot, and some autocannon rounds can be penetrated through here, through the front, as well as through the lower plate as well, so bear that in mind. And then you have another section below that at 60mm. In terms of the rear of the vehicle, 45mm, so easy to pang with ATGMs and also HESH rounds as well. Another section on the side of the turret at 44mm. The actual side of the vehicle, 38mm, and what this means is that you can only be overmatched by 115mm caliber guns or higher. So 120mm caliber guns can overmatch the side of this tank. You've got to avoid hitting that composite armor on the side of the tank. Like at this angle, if you went through the drive rail there, you would overmatch with a 120mm. A 105mm would not be able to overmatch this tank. And likewise, if you over angle, you're going to be able to penetrate air anyway, as long as you don't hit that 160mm section, I believe it was, of that composite armor over the side of the vehicle. So something to know, 120mm caliber guns can overmatch this vehicle if you shoot towards the sort of lower section, as there is this section which protrudes out. If I can just find it for you, I believe it's 25mm there of side armor to the highest section. So the lower kind of part you shoot on this 38mm of side armor, you can overmatch with 120mm caliber guns. The tracks count as 30mm of armor. We just discussed this 25mm plate. Then you have this other section sort of sandwiched in between the composite armor and the side armor at 19mm, and then there are other kind of irrelevant sections of just spaced armor all around the vehicle. But what is the take home for the MBT-80? Well, the hull, the lower plate and that mid plate gets easily penned by most things you're going to come up against. It might bounce at an angle like this for 40 to 45 degrees. Against autocannon rounds, however, it's very poor indeed. If you're trying to fire at this vehicle when it's not hull down, you can just go through the whole front of this vehicle apart from the turret. And if it's hull down, it's very, very strong. It can sort of bounce everything, high penetration like on the thumper, or the sort of higher end of the penetration in Era 3 can just go through this turret. But sort of mediocre to poor penetration will bounce, especially when it's using the full extent of its 10 degrees of gun depression, but you can just shoot that cupola, and that is a weak spot when it is hull down. If you're shooting ATGMs at this vehicle, you can go through the sort of composite armor on the upper hull and the lower plate and mid plate. However, from the side, you want to avoid that green section there. Go for the sort of mid to the back of this vehicle on the sides to avoid that composite armor, which is protecting against those ATGMs. Or you can try and put it underneath the gun in that section where if this thing's face hugging you, you can shoot down into that for a great weak spot. But yeah, you can side scrape against things that are 115mm caliber or below and do pretty well, but 120mm caliber guns you have to worry against side scraping because they can overmatch you if they sort of shoot for your drive wheel or behind that 160mm green section of composite armor. But yeah, if you're playing it, get hull down, try and move about as much on a ridgeline as possible to avoid people shooting your cupola, and yeah, use the full extent of your 10 degrees of gun depression, make those angles more effective. But for the most part, the hull is pretty bad in terms of its armor, and yeah, it's only got that kind of side composite armor protecting against those ATGMs, and the rear of this vehicle is very poor indeed. And with the poor mobility, if people get behind you into the sides, that's when you are very vulnerable. So a ridgeline sort of support tank to the better armored main battle tanks with hull armor, and yeah, you can play this tank very well. So I hope that's helped you with the armor profile of the MBT-80. We're now going to get into the first of two gameplays, so I'll see you over in the first gameplay in just a second. So here we are in the first gameplay of today's video. We are here on Nebelburg in the MBT-80 in a standard battle. We have spawned over here in the sort of centre of the map, slightly towards the east, and I'm going to be making my way towards the castle area, see if we can go hold down and use the 10 degrees of gun depression, good turret armour and pretty decent DPM. But before we start talking about the rest of this gameplay, if you have skipped ahead and just watched the gameplay of today's review, as I know it is quite late coming out, I'd just like to say the reason for the delay in getting this review and the subsequent videos that will be coming out over Christmas is because after I put out the review of the level 100 reward for the Battlefront season, the 114 SP2, the World War II tank, I unfortunately injured my back, something to do with the discs in the lower back, and yeah, I've only just kind of started to heal and been able to actually sit up and play the game, let alone make videos. So that's the reason for the delay. Just a little bit unfortunate and a little bit poor timing, as tomorrow's my birthday as this video is coming out, and then of course Christmas is just around the corner. So that's the reason why this is quite late. So I completely understand if people have skipped ahead just to watch the gameplay, as these are two pretty nice games in the MBT-80. So we came to this castle area to see if we can contest, but it didn't look like we had much to shoot at up on top of the castle. So we come just slightly to the right here, and we're going to be trying to get some nice support fire to the tanks that are spotting towards the kind of northwest and over towards the western side of the map. And you can see at this kind of distance we were struggling to use the standard APF SDS rounds due to the poor penetration. Only 515mm of penetration is pretty poor in Era 3. So I do carry plenty of premium APF SDS because I feel like to be competitive in this vehicle to the level that I want to be, I do have to carry that amount. However, I still wanted to carry half and half for the purposes of this video or this review to sort of show you that you still can make it work, and unfortunately you just have to sometimes, against certain tanks and at certain distances, have to load those premium rounds. And as you can see, I carry 6 of the HESH rounds just in case I come up against lightly armoured targets I know I can pen to improve my DPM. So yeah, it's already been just shy of kind of 3 minutes into this battle. We've already picked up a fairly substantial amount of damage, 5.2k direct damage and 946 assistance, with 1 kill to our name. We've bounced quite a few rounds, and that's a combination of that poor standard pen and also the fact that at distance you lose a lot of penetration with APF SDS rounds, as well as sometimes this gun just still feels a little bit derpy, even though we've got or in terms of my case, I've got my accuracy down to 0.21 and my aim time down to 1.84 seconds. You'd think with a sort of 0.21 accuracy, it would be absolutely fantastic, but it still can feel a little bit derpy. I don't know whether that's just my experience or whether there are some hidden stats in terms of the sort of dispersion whilst moving, whilst turning the turret, that kind of thing. So watch out for that. But we're making use of the traction system here that we've used to improve the mobility of this pretty sluggish main battle tank to come over here, use our 3,900 hit points as we've hoarded them from the start of this battle. And as you can see, it's 5 against 5 now, so it's still pretty close, and we're going to be making the push now to see if we are able to progress this battle and turn it in our team's favour. You can use the weight of this vehicle to be able to ram some other tanks. Quite a lot of main battle tanks will kind of do the same, if not more damage to you, but some of the kind of medium light tanks, tank destroyers, you will be able to ram for a substantial amount of damage, which is why the traction system does help to improve the sort of chassis or the whole rotation of this vehicle, but also to get you up to that top speed. And now we're chasing down the Wiesel, which it would appear is going to be coming back on sale around Christmas. So yeah, plenty of them on the battlefield. We fortunately tracked the Wiesel, and yeah, I was expecting that ram to kill the Wiesel. Unfortunately, that's not the case with the Wiesel, is it? Sometimes it just is an absolute cockroach and it manages to escape. So that Wiesel might come back to haunt me later in the video. We're going to have to check and see if it does. But for the moment, we're in a pretty dangerous fight. I know the Weasel spotted behind me, but I've just got to make sure that that 292 is taken out. Fortunately, our Challenger 2 friend helps us out, and now we are trying to get a shot on this Weasel there, who is sort of still visible with the true vision system, but so hard to hit on the move. They're so sneaky as well, and I'm just trying to see the buildings are loading in, which is so frustrating when you're trying to spot tanks with the true vision system. And now it's just about trying to get this very dangerous, pesky tank destroyer cross with a light tank out of the game, as the ATGMs are absolutely lethal, and I do not want to take a shot from the Weasel because I know that there's a chance that he could pop my turret with the nasty module damage of its ATGM. So we boost our combat rations there, a little bit of extra view range, a little bit of extra everything to the crew, but I'm going to have to turn and help out my main battle tank and get as many guns out of the game as possible. I put a shot into the MX-40 hoping our tank would finish him off. We're going to do the job. Unfortunately, we do take an ATGM from the Weasel. We can see him there in the distance. We're going to line up. We've already hit him once, sort of when he wasn't spotted, but we just did track damage and didn't actually damage him. And as you can see here, we are struggling to actually get a shot onto him. We do have the advantage by the two tanks, but he has the view range and the concealment advantage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get my teammate to come over with me and try and capture their base, put some pressure on the Weasel, and then he's going to have to come. And yeah, we're just going to have to see if we can sit in the base, get him to come towards us, and yeah, hopefully we can spot him when he fires his ATGMs, and one of us shall be able to take him out of the game, because it's been a very nice game up until this point. We've picked up 9.5k direct damage, 1.1k assistance. We've blocked 510, showing you the hull armor isn't great, but when you get into those hold down positions, you can use the turret armor quite effectively. We've still got 1744 hit points left, and we wouldn't have if we jumped over that ridge. I wasn't quite sure whether you can get down, because I don't usually come up this far into this castle area. I've very rarely got Nebelburg as a map, so I'd quite like to get it a little bit more. But we go around here. I'm always scanning the horizon now with my eyes, just trying to see if we can see where the Weasel is. I'm going to get into the cap. We're going to hide behind a rock, so we limit the amount of angles the Weasel has to fire his ATGM on us. And if we both face different ways, that means that there's two angles where the Weasel can approach that we have guns aiming directly at him. So I'm going to aim this way, and I think in a minute I'm going to try and ping to get the tank to look the other way. There we go. And I'm expecting the Weasel to come directly above us towards that castle area, which is why I'm kind of pre-aimed there. Unfortunately, as the Weasel gets spotted, there's going to be that kind of panic. Where the hell is he? I'm pretty sure that the Weasel's going to come. There we are. He's detected looking at me, as he does have the rear of my tank. Fortunately, we survived that blast. We're going to quickly spin around, and if we didn't have the extra gun handling and that whole rotation there, we wouldn't have been able to clutch shot that Weasel out of the game there just before he gets round that building. So we managed to pick up a very nice result there on Nebelburg in an 8 minutes and 2 second battle. That's only a second class, so yeah, people are doing well in this vehicle. 1403 basic XP, 3 kills, 9.9k direct damage, 1.1k assistance, and 510 blocked. So a very epic end to that game there on Nebelburg, with a nice victory for the MBT-80, with a profit with or without a premium account, even though we liberally applied the premium APF SDS round. So that's it for the first gameplay there. We're now going to head on into the second gameplay. So you're joining me here in the second battle of today's video. We're already a minute into this battle here on Heilbronn in a standard battle. We've made our way here into E5, just using the 10 degrees of gun depression and the turret armor to poke these ridge lines and see if we can get some shots on anything in the center of the map and also towards the south. However, we are very wary of tanks that might have gone into the town, that might be trying to flank us, as there is a heavy tank or a main battle tank now spotted. Now there's two of them in the A1 and the C1 positions. We notice that we have a Malo here and also a Merkava Mark III fighting this Bradley, I believe, and also an enemy T-72BU. The enemy 477A, I believe, is going to join the fray, so we're going to try and have to get as many rounds out now as possible. We somehow bounce off the M3A2 Bradley. That I'm not sure how that happens, but yeah, it's doing World of Tanks things. And now we've switched to the premium. I want to make sure I pen every one of these rounds, and when you're firing at the Object 477 aim low, it's going to be very hard for us to pen with our standard pen. So we're going to use the premium rounds. We're going to try and get round the side of this vehicle, and then we can just put round after round, take this very overpowered tank out of the game. And yeah, we've cleared this central section. Then we have reduced a line of fire that the enemies had on us, and we can go back to our original position, and maybe we're going to get some shots out towards the north of the map at the enemies that may be approaching our base. We snap a shot there into the M60AX, a tank that you very, very rarely see. A tank sort of whiffs there, not sure where it went. I didn't see there was actually a wall that was covering the bottom half of the M60AX. So we have a great reload thanks to the fact that we have boosted up all of our skills on our commander and equipment setup to get the most out of this gun, and we managed to reload in time to take out that M60AX. We're up to 4.2k direct damage and 1000 assistance already with 1 kill, and it's very even on the teams. We're going to poke around this ridge now, see if we can get some shells into this Challenger 2 and also to the heavy tank or main battle tank that is situated in F7, and try and just create a bit of a crossfire on the enemy to make them think twice. A lot of our tank did go to that typical camping location along the sea line in sort of C7, 8, 9, so we've had to do the brunt of the work alongside here our fellow main battle tanks. Unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult for us to sort of dig these tanks out, but we're just going to get shots in where possible. We know that our base is now under threat, so I don't want to push round that corner anymore because we do expose the hull of our tank, which is weak. Instead, we're going to turn and we're going to sit at sort of mid to long ranges and try and snipe at these tanks that are trying to attack our base as it is under threat quite dramatically. We're down by 4 tanks. It's not looking great, and at this point in the game I think it's a case of just getting as much damage out as possible. Still going to try and go for the win, however we're just going to have to try and survive any scenarios that come, like this Challenger 2 coming after us. He's bitten off a little bit more than he could chew. He's on low hit points, but he's probably thinking, I want to try and get as much out of this game as it's looking like his team is going to win. We take him out, and now we're going to go, instead of back towards the base, try and take out these tanks that are in the centre here. We've got a fellow friendly main battle tank alongside us that can hopefully help us survive for as long as possible. We are down by a ratio of 2 to 1, and yeah, we start taking a shot from an MA-AGS in the rear. You can see that the gun depression over the back of the tank is absolutely horrific, which alongside this poor hull traverse means when people try to circle you, it can be quite annoying. So you've got to try and improve your hull traverse where possible and your turret traverse, but also turn your hull and your turret at the same time to get the most out of your gun, so you can swing it around on your opposition. And now, yeah, it's just me and this McCarver left to defend this central location. At this point, if the enemy want to capture the base, they can go ahead and do so. If I go out into the open, I'm going to be absolutely shredded, so we're going to fall back using the good reverse speed and let the enemy now come to us in this central location. There's not too much me and this McCarver can do apart from have a valiant last stand. We get a nice fire there on the Type 59D with the Deadeye skill helping there, I believe, to damage his fuel tank or his engine, set him on fire, and that does boost us over 11,000 damage. Another shell takes us over 12,000 damage, and now we're going to try and get some shells in on this T-72BU. That was kind of a desperation shot there into the turret. Never going to be able to get a shot there, even with our premium rounds. So in this kind of situation, it's usually trying to take out as many tanks as quickly as possible, but there is a tank right to above me to my right and also ahead of us, and the rest of them are going to be coming straight after us. So after making the decision now just to try and be a little bit more aggressive, to try and get the last remaining shots in this battle, we take out the Type 92. We're still down by 4 tanks. This T-72BU is going to come over, and I'm going to try and get as many shots into him. Unfortunately, it's just the one, but we still picked up a nice respectable damage total of over 12,000, showing you that this tank is more than capable of doing a lot of damage. Just try not to expose your hull too much, go hull down, and it's a fairly balanced and fun tank in my opinion, with some good stats but also some pretty bad stats as well. So that's a sniper high caliber first class. We finished top on our team in that defeat, 845 base XP with 3 kills, but more importantly 12,904 damage with 29 direct hits, 1,075 assistance, blocking 1,100 damage, and that's a profit with or without a premium account in a 6-minute 50-second battle. That is a nice combined total there, 13.9k combined in a defeat. So sometimes you just can't do enough to win the game, but that's the best combined that I've had in this tank so far. So these two games show you the absolute best of this tank. It's best played as a support tank, using the vision from your team. Get hull down on those ridge lines, use your turret armor, and just try and make the most of this gun. Invest everything into the gun in my opinion, and also a little bit into the mobility, and you should have fun in the MBT-80. Not the absolute best, but yeah, definitely not one of the poorer tanks in Era 3. So that's it for my review of the MBT-80. I hope anyone that has bought the Ultimate Season Pass is enjoying the vehicle. Let me know what you think of it down below. And hopefully as my back starts to recover, I might be able to put some more videos out over Christmas. Thank you for all your support during 2023 and for your patience whilst I've had some problems with my health towards the end of the year. My birthday is on the 22nd of December. That's tomorrow as this video goes out. So there'll be a big giveaway going over either on my Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, or on my YouTube. I haven't decided which, probably on YouTube, so keep an eye out on the socials and on my YouTube for a big giveaway with some pretty tasty tanks, including a very, very popular Era 2 Eastern Alliance Premium Medium tank with some nice ATGM. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.